This is Eflex and welcome back to another A Producer's Approach video. In this video, we're going to be looking at the Fat Rat song, Unity. So if you guys haven't watched my videos in the past, I basically break down these videos into 3 separate sections. I have an intro backstory section, breakdown analysis section, and lastly an outro section. So this is the Fat Rat song, Unity. And the Fat Rat is one of those artists that got really big on his own through a lot of gaming music, a lot of YouTube videos using his music, and now he's like a really big artist. I would say not really in the realm of like Skrillex in them, but maybe like a next tier down, with being how notable he is. Like his music isn't really on the radio per se, but most of the people on YouTube know who the Fat Rat is, or if you listen to like EDM music in general or gaming music or watch some type of YouTube video, you probably have heard the Fat Rat's music. So I actually was introduced to the Fat Rat through this channel X Keto back in 2014 when this actual promotional video came out for this song Unity, and this is the first song I heard from the Fat Rat. I don't think it's his first song in general, but it might be one of the first songs that really hit big from the Fat Rat. I don't know much of his music prior to Unity, but I know this is like the first song I've heard that is really big from the Fat Rat. And you know, Unity has actually changed over the years because there's a sample used in the middle of the song in the break section, which was like a sample from, I think, another artist or something like that, or another song. And the Fat Rat actually changed that in the more modern version of Unity that you could download to like a child's choir. And it's interesting because this is like the original version and I prefer that sample better, but I'm not sure if you can download this version anymore, that you hear here like via the file, like through the Fat Rat's website, or you might be able to find it online, but I don't exactly know where you find that original sound file with that sample instead of the children's choir in the break section. So it's just really interesting how much this song has changed over the years. And the Fat Rat now is one of those really big artists. I think he even played at like a TwitchCon or something, and like he had like a really big live set. And most recently, within the past year or two, he released an album which had like insanely good music. But I think like one of the people he collaborated with is Lindsey Sterling. I think she's like a really big violinist on YouTube, and she's really big in kind of that music world of YouTube. So it's like the Fat Rat is elevated to working with some more notable artists, but he has a lot of notable songs on YouTube in general, and started off kind of where a lot of the other EDM artists started off with self-releasing and then getting the songs promoted on some of the bigger promotional channels, and then slowly building up from there to be more notable artists in the industry. So anyways, this is the Fat Rat song Unity, and we'll talk more about this song now as I break it down. All right, so that intro, really cool. Right off the bat, you kind of almost have like a drum roll with the percussion, and that kind of starts off the song, and that's really cool. Just reminds me of a drum line almost starting off the song, and then there's a little sweep, and then it's about to go into the break, kind of intro break section, and there's a lot of 8-bit sounds in the song. So this sound, or the song to me, sounds like a video game soundtrack. So let's keep going. All right, so that whole intro section is all going through like an 8-bit processor. So he has a lead and a chord progression, and even the sound effects, they're all going through an 8-bit, almost like kind of crusher or kind of like synthesizer or some type of processing effect to make it all 8-bit, which is really cool because it's a really nice transition. It kind of gives you the vibe of like, okay, this is kind of like the video game kind of vibe, but the lead is really melodic, the chord progression is really melodic, and then the sound effects are like really cool. They sound like an old 8-bit video game, like you're playing on like an N64 or on a Game Boy Advance or a Game Boy SP in some regard like that, or you're playing in an arcade machine where you hear kind of those kind of 8-bit sounds, which is really cool. And then even the sweep, the VFX sweep into the first drop is going through that same kind of 8-bit processing. So it's really cool how all the sounds are going through an 8-bit processing. And then right now it's about to drop, and then it's going to go into the more traditional synthesized sounds and regular kind of electronic percussion and the more traditional sense for a glitch hop song. So let's keep going. All right, so that is the first drop. And what you notice is it's pretty much the same sound and structure as it was in that 8-bit section in the intro, but now you really get the full sound, which is really good. So the rhythm is halftime percussion, so kick on 1, snare on 3. Again, this song has a lot of movement, kind of like Yakin Thwadi, if I might have botched that, but the previous Tut Tut Child glitch hop song, there was a lot of movement in that song, even though it was glitch hop at 110 BPM. There's a lot of movement in this song as well. The lead sound is also kind of mimicking the 8-bit sound, where it's like really high in frequency, and it just reminds you of kind of that 8-bit kind of lead synth. And the bass chords and bass progressions are really nice too, because they are deeper in tone, but they also have that kind of 8-bit feel to them. So it's really interesting how both sounds, like the bass line and the lead, are similar in terms of like having that kind of video game-esque 8-bit sound to them, but they're just fuller and they aren't 8-bit sounding and processed. So they still have some type of hint and theme to the original 8-bit theme, but they're just fuller sounding sounds. And it's just really nice how the chord progression changes a little bit halfway through that drop section here, which is really cool. And it just, gives some variation to this section of the drop. So that's just really cool in general. And this section here, I think the lead synth changes into the more traditional Fat Rat pluck sound. So let's keep going. All right, so this drop is really cool. So the lead and the chord progression don't change, but the sound for the lead changes to a more pluckier synth, which is a more traditional Fat Rat synth. And the bass line becomes more of a bass pluck, which is really nice. And that's also another type of sound that the Fat Rat uses. And then what I noticed is that there's actually different kind of saw waves or super saw stacks that kind of play the chord progression every once in a while, and they kind of play certain notes for a short amount of time. I almost want to say like eighth notes. They play like eighth note little sections of the chord progression to just kind of give some high end within the chord progression while the bass pluck is playing, which really gives the song really nice movement. And the kind of VFX used in both sections is kind of like a laser as well. I missed that previously, but I heard it again this time. There's like a laser riser. But it's really cool how the pluck sounds really complement the last part, where it's more the 8-bit sounds, and then the pluck sounds come in, and they are a fuller sound, but it's in like within the same frequency and timbre. So like there's no dropout in sound. It doesn't sound too weird. It almost sounds natural that they're switching sounds, which is really cool. And this lead in itself is really iconic. Like I've heard Unity like in multiple other videos, and it's just, I think, a song widely known amongst the YouTube community, at least. So this is definitely one of those iconic songs for sure. But it's really cool because now you kind of hear the precursor into that sample that he used in this break section that is not in the newer version of Unity that you download. If you download Unity now, it's like a children's choir, but this was the original sample he used for this break section, which I actually prefer a little bit more. But I can understand why he switched it out for the children's choir, maybe for legal rights reasons, or he just wanted something a little bit more unique than that vocal sample used in this section. So anyways, we're going to get into the break section, and let's keep going.
One family in the sweet harmony. Someday we'll all be free.
All right, so that break section, really good. Kind of hits me in the feels a little bit. So basically, the vocal sample plays, and you have the pads playing in the background. And I really like the processing on the vocal sample itself. It's pitched up. There's a lot of glitching to it, and there's like even vocoded sections layered, almost like a vocal stack, where like they exaggerate that part of the vocal section with the vocoded layer on the bottom. So it's like a nice, another deeper layer and tone underneath the vocal sample that's already playing, which is really cool. And he uses a vocoder, which is even cooler because that vocoder we've discussed in previous songs is really nice. And then he also brings in like the really more orchestral percussion and almost like string sounds and brass sounds in the section, so it makes it sound really cinematic and really orchestral, which is like a tie into orchestral EDM, which is really nice. And just the overall feel is really nice, and just the pacing and the structure of the section is really good, and how it kind of builds from a kind of pitched up vocal to like more of a cinematic orchestral experience before you kind of build up into the second drop again. So this break section is really nice. A lot of different effects going on with the vocals, a lot of different processing with the vocoder going into it, the glitching effects going into it, and then just the pitching of the vocals up. So it's just a lot of different things going on within this one section. So anyways, let's keep going. All right, so this time in the build-up, you hear the pluck bass sounds, and you have a more 8-bitish type lead sound, but you hear like the plucks and stuff, whereas the beginning, it was all going through an 8-bit processor, almost like, where it almost sounded like all the leads, sound effects, bass lines were going through like an 8-bit processor to sound like it was fitting for an N64 game. So it's really interesting how there's fuller sounds now. You can hear the white noise kind of rise up, or if it's not a white noise, it's like a synth opening up its oscillator or its filtering to where it has like a lot more high end, and it's building up. And then you hear like the vocal sample of the person holding a note. So anyways, we'll listen to this drop, we'll listen to the outro, and I'll talk more about Unity after the song's done. So enjoy the song. All right, so that's the Fat Rat song Unity. So we'll back up to the second drop. So the second drop is actually very similar to the first part of the first drop, where the sounds are more of the 8-bit kind of, not 8-bitish, but more video game sounding kind of lead, synth, and bass line. But what's different is like the pitched vocal kind of holding that sustaining note and then eventually glitching out. That's a nice piece of variation for that sample. So it varies that drop a little bit as opposed to the first drop, and just repeating the same structure in that sense. And then the drop plays out, but then it's only half of the first drop, so it's that one section, and then outros. Not so much in the same 8-bit style, but the sounds do switch to be a lower sounding sound, still has that kind of video game vibe, and it's still playing that same lead and bass progression, which is really interesting. Kind of outroing out as it's starting to fade out, with like a different sound that's lower in volume and slowly being filtered out. So what's interesting about the Fat Rat is he has this amazing ability to make music with the same lead and same kind of chord progression, but change all the sounds, or change a lot of the sounds to where it varies enough, even though he doesn't really have to change the lead sound and the chord progression that much at all. Like, it's pretty much almost the same lead and chord progression playing the whole song, but it changes so much because he changes a lot of the synths, the sounds, and he's able to choose particular sounds that match the same frequency, which is pretty crazy. That's a really hard skill to do, but that's why this song is so catchy. And he does that with a lot of his other songs too. He'll either change the pitch, or he'll just use the same, or he'll switch up the sounds a little bit, but just use the same lead and chord progression, which is another technique Vice Tone uses, another artist that makes a lot of house. They did the same technique a lot in their early music too, which is why their music's so catchy and memorable, because it's just the lead and the same chord progression playing over and over and over again, but being varied by having the sounds change and adding things here and there. But the core of the lead and the chord progression just stay the same the whole time throughout the whole song from beginning to end. It's just pretty interesting how that works. So anyways, this is the Fat Rat song Unity. Really good song, the catchiest lead that you could ever hear, besides all of his other music. I'm pretty sure Monody compares in terms of this for like catchy leads, but this song definitely has a catchy lead. That's what I like. The bass line's really nice. I always love those sections where it has like the pluck bass on them and that kind of pluck synth. I really like that the Fat Rat sound kind of has that kind of pluck bass kind of sound to it. I like that 8-bit intro, which is really cool. The drum roll to the 8-bit, fully 8-bit kind of sounds going through a processing just to sound more like an old school video game sound is really nice, because normally you hear that with just one synth or percussion. You don't hear it with like all the VFX, synth, bassline, percussion, all just going through that same processing. So that's very rare to hear. And that sample in the break section is really good. And just the building up of that break section too is really nice too. It's the little bit of a difference in variation within the song. And I just like how he used all that vocal processing on that vocal sample. Like there's so much processing on that sample. It's really cool how he pitched it, glitched the vocal in a sense, and put a lot of reverb on it, and added the vocoder layer on the bottom, like the deeper layer, to exaggerate part of that vocal sample. So overall, this song is really good. There's a reason why it has 6,400,000 views just on the X Keto channel. I'm pretty sure on the Fat Rat's actual channel, this song has even more views. So, I mean, on average, this song probably has like 3 to 4 million views on each promotional channel it came out on. So you can understand and see why the Fat Rat is as notable in the EDM and just YouTube community and streaming community as he is today. So I hope you guys like this video. Like, comment, subscribe, and if not, definitely check out the Fat Rat's music. You might not have recognized his music, but I'm pretty sure you've heard his music, because I feel like they play a lot of his music, like if you're on YouTube, in a lot of videos, and maybe somewhere outside, like if there's someone that's a fan of the Fat Rat, they'll just blast his music. But I feel like a lot of YouTube videos use the Fat Rat's music. So you probably heard a Fat Rat song somewhere if you're scrolling on YouTube watching videos. So anyways, I hope you guys like this video. And again, check out the Fat Rat's other music. And I hope to see you guys in the next A Producer's Approach video. All right, everyone. Have a good one. Peace.